Good evening, everybody. If everybody could please find a seat. Thank you very much. My name is Dave Anderson. I'd like to thank you for joining us here this evening at the UW Center for Civic Engagement. Tonight, you will hear from the two candidates running for Mayor of the City of Wausau. Tonight's forum is brought to you in partnership with the Greater Wausau Chamber of Commerce, the Wisconsin Institute for Public Policy and Service, and the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point at Wausau. Before we begin tonight's forum, I'd like to welcome to the stage UW-Stevens Point at Wausau Campus Executive, Miranda Gentry Spiegel. Please join me in welcoming Miranda.
Thank you. Hi, thank you for being here tonight. I really love seeing this auditorium so full of people. I have worked on this campus for around 12 years at this point and love that we are able to have community events like this. This is our Center for Civic Engagement, and we have all sorts of events that take place in this theater. But I'm always really excited when we get to use this building for the purpose it was really created, which is to foster civic engagement. And I'm so glad that we get to do that tonight. And so I just want to say thank you again for being here. We appreciate you spending this time with us. And at this time, I am going to welcome Dave Ekman, the President and CEO of the Greater Wausau Chamber of Commerce, to the stage to provide his opening remarks. Thank you.
Hey, good evening, everybody. That's a full house. This is nice. Thank you for being here. My name is Dave Ekman. I'm the President and CEO of the Greater Wausau Chamber of Commerce. What I'd like to do before I turn this over to Dave Anderson is provide context for this discussion tonight, this forum, this public discourse. My hope is that we can give our candidates, our moderator, a chance to answer the questions respectfully. There will be time for Q&A towards each end of that session, okay? So, contextually, we are in the Greater Wausau region. We have a Wausau statistical area, the Metro MSA, Wausau, designated by the Bureau of Labor Statistics as a relevant economic center of Wisconsin. We're surrounded by rural communities. We are shrinking. We're not growing. We're not. Our public good is at risk, big time. And so from the chamber perspective, we look at what the engine of economic growth, business and industry. So that's what tonight's going to be about. And then our partners at the Marathon County League of Women Voters, Kay Palmer, has put together another forum next week, Thursday, March 14th, 6:30 p.m. at NTC in the Conference Center. There'll be an opportunity there. They will be talking about more of the social and the dynamics of what's taking place here in central Wisconsin. Tonight, we're focused on the economy. With that, if we are going to compete, and I mean this in the most earnest way, if we're going to create that place to attract, retain, and develop talent, to support our innovative companies, we need to have forward-looking leaders who are willing to take risks, who are stepping up to transform the nature of this economy to become magnetic, to keep people here, to attract people here, to bring companies here, keep companies here. Critically important. I can't underscore the nature of the rural challenge we face, and as part of our rural resurgence, we have to develop and fight for this community if we're going to survive, for this region, for central Wisconsin. So tonight, we're going to give you an opportunity to hear from our mayoral candidates. So with that, I'm going to bring Dave Anderson to the stage and let Dave take it from here. Thank you for being here and have a great evening.
Thank you, Dave and Miranda, for your opening remarks. Before we welcome our first candidate to the stage, I'd like to remind all of the attendees here tonight that this forum is a setting for all ideas and platforms to be shared. Time permitting, there will be a public question period for each question. We ask that you refrain all questions until that time. We also ask that our attendees be respectful of our candidates and of one another. And with that, I'll tell you up front that any disruptors will be asked to leave the facility. Lastly, if all of you could silence your cell phones, that would really be greatly appreciated. Without further ado, I'd like to get started. Tonight's order will be Challenger Councilman Doug Denny first, followed by incumbent Mayor Katie Rosenberg. Each candidate will be asked 5 questions that our partner organizations have put forward for the evening, and then you'll have the opportunity to ask up to 3 questions, time permitting. With that, I'd like to welcome to the stage Councilman Doug Denny. Doug? Sitting in my living room. Are you hearing me okay with the transfer of the mics? Fantastic.
Yes, good.
Doug, I'm going to remind you that there's some lights up here. The audience can't see them, but when the yellow light comes on, you'll have 30 seconds. And when the red light comes on, that's going to be a hard stop for your answer. And I will enforce the red lights. So just want to tell you.
Thank you.
So Councilman Denny, thank you for joining us tonight. And I'd like you to take the next couple of minutes and introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your platform.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, David. Thank you. And I'd also like to take an opportunity to thank the audience for coming out here tonight, giving up your time and investment in issues and participation in this event that is important to the city of Wausau, that you get involved. I appreciate that. And Dave, so I'm Doug Denny. I'm running for mayor, city of Wausau. I'm looking to put Wausau back on the map as a great place to live, raise a family, start a business, and grow a business. I'm going to also like to acknowledge my wife, Jean, somewhere out there in the audience. Hi. Jean and I met in the Army while we served on active duty. She was born in Frankfurt, Germany, to a military family. We've been all over the world. She's been all over the world with her family, with her military career, and then with me on my career. So when we got out, out of the military, we had an opportunity to live just about anywhere in the country that we wanted. We decided we wanted to move back to Wisconsin, or that's where my hometown is. She's an Army brat, but I felt we could put some roots down here in Wisconsin for our kids to call home. So we chose Wausau. I grew up in Green Bay, but Wausau was calling us. We visited here. We liked what we saw. And we raised 3 kids here. They all graduated from Wausau East. They're all now productive members of society. They're off my payroll. I feel good about that. And Wausau helped that. So I talked a little bit about my military experience, my leadership throughout my military time, sharpened my skills to provide the necessary leadership that we are needing at City Hall. My military experience took me to places like Central America for drug interdiction, humanitarian relief missions. I deployed my unit to West Yellowstone, Montana for the 1988 forest fires at the national park there. As an instructor pilot down at Fort Rucker, Alabama, I had an opportunity to train the Egyptian Flight Detachment VIP unit and a chain of command for President Hosni Mubarak's flight detachment when they fielded the UH-60 Black Hawk. The highlight of my career was company command. I commanded in Europe 155 soldiers and civilians, $100 million worth of property, of military property, and conducted missions like support the vice president during the 1992 Winter Olympics in France. And we conducted the Beirut Air Bridge mission, which is a highly sensitive State Department mission in the Mediterranean, providing critical airlift support to the United States Embassy in war-torn Lebanon.
Doug,
So-
I'd like to
go
thank
ahead.
you for that introduction. With the 2024 spring election just 4 weeks away, please share your overarching vision, I should say, for Wausau's economic future and how you believe the business community and community members can contribute to that vision.
I hope it's overarching and not overreaching.
Exactly.
Yes. So I spent a little more time on my introduction talking about my military service, because I'm trying to show that I have the capacity in complex situations and in critical missions, and honestly, folks, the mission at City Hall isn't that complex. It's rather simple. We're looking to provide core services in the most effective and efficient manner while providing sound financial practices. So, like I said, I want to put Wausau back on the map as a place to raise kids, live, work, start a business, grow a business. So what does that look like? So vision is really, if you define that, as strategy. The mayor has produced, as promised when she ran, a strategic plan, which is good. We need that. It took 3 years, but we've got it. And now it's for the last years probably sat on the shelf, little used. I read it and I've invoked it probably more times, and maybe the only alder to invoke it over the last year. One of the only. So from strategy comes tactics. And tactics drive courses of action, goals and objectives, staff priorities, staff work, staff coordination, communications. So what we're missing right now, and strategy is really only as good as leadership willing to execute it. So the gap is that I see, we've seen recently conflicts play out publicly between directors, confusion as to who's doing what, confusion on the budget process. And we've seen that what we need, the mayor needs to be a leader who is also a referee and fairly and objectively resolves conflict amongst directors on behalf of the city and not for political ambition. Now, to be clear, I'm not the enemy here. And the mayor is certainly not my enemy. I'd like to think of us as competitors in the field of ideas. And as you said in your opening, we're here to discuss ideas. So I hope that's where we hit home tonight. So where do we start? We have to start with where we are. We have a lot of great things going for us. We have a great regional medical center here. We have good regional tech here and vocational center. We've got a river life, a river development or a riverfront with lots of potential. We're at the crossroads of 2 major highways. We're the gateway to the north. So we need to cultivate our strengths and our beauty here. And what we don't want is 4 more years of neglect of the business issues. Despite promises, over the last 4 years, we've seen really little movement. We've got nothing new on the riverfront. The downtown mall area is stalled. We haven't brought a major employer into the city. We need to bring a whale to the city. We can't just build our way out of it with restaurants and bars. We need to bring good paying jobs with manufacturing and industrial businesses that can do that for us. So, it's a real scandal that Foot Locker got away from us, left town without much of a fight. The mayor was formerly employed by Foot Locker. One would think would be in the best position to fight for Wausau, to go to bat for Wausau and put us in a better position to retain a significant employer in the city. When I got out of the Army, I hired on locally here with Ferguson, right here in town. I had a choice of 23 locations in the upper Midwest. We chose Wausau. In 7 years in that position, I rose to be the top salesman in the region, twice recognized as one of the top salesmen in the country out of 1,000 salesman in the company. I mention that because I have the capacity to put my mind to the problem, prioritize and execute. I will fight for Wausau. I will meet with our top employers, and I will make Wausau a great place to start and grow a business.
So let's move on and talk a little bit more specifically about strategies for economic development. Councilman, in what ways do you see public-private partnerships contributing to economic development in Wausau in areas like transportation, utilities, and technology? And how will you facilitate these kinds of collaborations and ensure prosperity for all of the entities who are participating?
Well, I think the first step here, David, is to establish procedures that are fair and transparent, and that are designed to put the city first. The city first. Wausau often, Wausau needs to position itself as a fair and attractive and trustworthy partner to do business with. What we seem to experience more often than not is limited participation in large projects, especially when there's significant city dollars in play. For an example here, we recently experienced with the lead service line replacement with CIP. It was a single bidder, and what could potentially put the city on the hook for $80 million. And that's, in the mayor's own words, it's going to cost us $80 million. The mayor already verbally committed to the residents several times that this work would be done free of charge for all residents. And the flyers that are going out by CIP, the agents of the mayor and the water department confirm that they're offering this for free. Well, when we passed this a few weeks back, it was a 7-4 vote, and one of the major points of discussion was, where are we coming up with the gap financing? Because it is not 100% grant money. In the early stages, the first year, we're going to be fairly flush because we got ahead of it, and we're going to get more of the share in the first year. But in the years to follow, right now, we're going to have to finance in the first year about $2 million, just under $2 million. And council has yet to decide whether we're going to pay for that or whether the residents are going to take a portion of that. But funding is limited, so in the years to follow, that gap is probably not likely to close at $80 million in 5 years. And then add to that another $25 million for the city side, completely unfunded. So how did we get to one bidder? Two possibilities probably exist here. For the CIP contract, it was either preordained by the White House, or it's possible that our reputation for doing business with Wausau, with developers in the last 4 years, has tarnished to the point where nobody wants to do business with us anymore. And it isn't just this project, it's other projects where we've had single bidders, no bidders, bidders where we select a person, they back out before they consummate the deal. And maybe there's a third component here. And we talk about that transparency in these partnerships. The bidder, the project, the sole bidder was Community Infrastructure Partners. Community Infrastructure Partners is also the writer of the specification we use to select these guys. They used a term called, it's public-private partnership, but they put a little CB in the front of it. So it's CBP3, community-based private-public partnership. And as we found out with reporting in the pilot and review here recently, that's really largely a marketing scheme, a marketing word. And it ranked 30% of our selection criteria for that company. Well, it was the only one. Unfortunately, maybe others didn't bid because they didn't understand CBP3. They did because they wrote the spec. So we need to get into, so my instincts on this were correct. It didn't make sense that a brand new startup company, which they were 2 months old when the mayor met them in Washington, D.C. How do they come in to Wausau? I mean, I would never think of going to Washington to solve a problem in Wausau that our local contractors can do. So most of our problems when we talk about the transparency or the how do we facilitate, it really come from a lack of transparent and process, lack of leadership from the mayor's office. My solution is to articulate a transparent, formal process that would be consistent with the intent of the state statutes for bidding and soliciting proposals. We might have hit the letter of the law, but did we hit the intent when we greased the process for this company to come into town?
Thank you very much for that. Now, talking about workforce development, how can the city encourage and facilitate continuous learning opportunities for the workforce, especially given the evolving nature of industries and technology and the way things are changing?
Well, an interesting question here is, one thing vibrant cities have in common is that we have a healthy primary, secondary, and technical education system. And we talked a little bit about technical. The resources we have here, the NTC is great. If it isn't already too late, we really need to put effort into saving this institution right here. 10 years ago, we had a roughly 1,300 plus students at this institution. Today, we're barely at 300. That's alarming. So can I fix that as mayor? We can help. We can have the conversations. But what this also we can do is we can tap into this network here that we're here talking right now with the Chamber of Commerce. Chamber of Commerce has programs. It offers education and marketing and advertising. It offers a lot of networking opportunities, and I've had an opportunity to take advantage of those over the years, the last 2 years here as an alder, and to get plugged in with some of the local business leaders. Well designed, and they're well worth it. So if you see them advertised out there, take a shot at going to one of those. I started my business career here in industry at Ferguson, like I mentioned earlier. I was calling on every paper mill up and down the Wisconsin River Valley. I called on all the paper mills up and down the Fox River Valley. What I learned in those early days from my transition from the Army to sales was on-the-job training and how business works, how work gets done, how unions operate, how to communicate, how to win, how to lose. Very, very valuable insight into how business works. Another problem that we face here, and we talked about the schools here, a lot of our problems parallel what's happening with the school district with the changing demographics. So we need to find ways to solve that. We need to work with the district, not against the district. The mayor needs to be a unifier with the Wausau School District, the UW system, the NTC, other communities, and the chamber to address affordable housing, job creation, childcare is another thing we can get into to make Wausau a great place to live, work, raise a family, start and grow a business. Wausau, like I think Dave mentioned here, we're the hub of the economic center of Marathon County. We should be seen as the leader in the region. Waiting for Washington and Madison to bring us prosperity is not the solution. We don't need to lose to Milwaukee, Rib Mountain, Mosinee, Madison. There are people in the audience, I'm sure right now, concerned about the viability for their children to continue to live here. They care about quality schools, affordable living. They want this to be a desirable place for their kids and grandchildren to stay, once they're off their family's payroll. Learning starts at home here. We teach our kids how to balance a checkbook, how to buy a car. So when we put them out into the network of this city, we need to trust in our leadership that holds this whole network together, and it comes from leadership at the top. I hear Mayor Rosenberg is going to Madison this weekend. That's fine, but I'll be here in Wausau talking to local business leaders. People have options. Why not Wausau?
Thank you, Councilman Denny. Switching gears a little bit, can you provide some specific examples of regulations or bureaucratic processes that you believe are in need of streamlining to increase the efficiency of city operations? And how will you involve business and other stakeholders in the review and reform of those regulations to ensure they're fair, effective, and responsive to community needs?
Well, first, we need to get back to the basics, Dave. Again, I'm going to touch on processes. This has been a theme of mine for years, that we have a consistent process. They need to be fair and open and consistent with a strategic plan. We need to invite front-end public engagement. It's too late once the project's coming up and then we go to residents and say, by the way, here's what we're doing. So it needs to include the public engagement, seek and understand what the developer's intent is, intention of what is the city's long-term goal, what is our strategic plan. You know, I've seen a lot of inconsistency in rezoning of late. You know, if we're constantly rezoning, maybe we need to adjust the master plan to our strategic plan. You know, I'm not a politician, and I'm not interested in, you know, murky procedures that allow some developers to slip through while the next, depending on the whims of the council, may not, or maybe the tenacity of that particular developer and his ability to navigate the ropes with the city. You know, there's several recent examples where developers have come to the planning commission or council and they've been shot down, and not necessarily. I mean, you couldn't predict it on the front end, and you could flip a coin and try to determine which way it went because we're not consistent. For example, we had a small developer recently purchase a city-owned property that was off the levy for over a decade. Developer came along and wanted to put some small housing units in there. All he needed, he asked for not one nickel from the city. All he wanted was some consideration on zoning to accommodate that development. Ultimately, the city refused that request. Now he's sitting on a worthless piece of property through no fault of his own that he cannot develop, and he's paying taxes on that today. You know, so how's that for regulations? I'm not saying that the regulations are bad, but let's understand everything on the front end so we don't run into these situations again and put people on the hook. That simple mistake costs us in taxes. It costs us with less money for economic growth. It costs us housing. It costs us police and fire protection. It's a ripple effect. Every time we do that, you tarnish the reputation. Who's going to want to come here? You know, so as much as cutting red tape is good, you know, we probably should follow the guidelines we already have. And then, according to a study that I recently read by an outfit that we're working behind the scenes on, it's called University, CITY. Wausau is one of 5 peer cities without a set policy on determining developer incentives. Yet, Wausau spends the largest dollar value of all peer cities in TID incentives to developers. So imagine that. We don't have a policy, but we spend the most. So apparently the policy is we'll spend her and they'll come. You know, we've got to have a policy. So what I would do is I would place the Economic Development Department under the close supervision of the mayor. As mayor, I'll be the city's top salesman. In my role as a strategic alliance manager, in the renewable fuels market, I worked with CEOs, bankers, boards of directors, major equipment manufacturers, EPCs, to get projects off the ground. And one time I landed a deal in Ontario, Canada for a multi-million-dollar ethanol plant, $100 million ethanol plant, of which our portion was about $4 million. Largest component of parts going into the plant. My management was concerned we're shipping product out of country and we don't have a good lean procedure. We've never shipped out of country before. So how do we handle this? I got on the airplane the next day and went up and saw the investors and had a meeting. When I landed back in Wausau, I had a message from the CFO for my company. The company had wired us $1 million on the first shipment in advance of us shipping the product. That's something that had never happened on that scale in the history of our company. When the rubber meets the road, when we have a crisis, when we have a project that needs to be moved, I could have walked away from the sale. I could have called the customer and said, hey, sorry, but we can't take your purchase order, man. We don't trust you. No, I got on an airplane. I'll pick up the phone. I'll get on an airplane. I'll talk to whoever I need to talk to. We're going to get the deals done for Wausau, period. Am I out of time? There it
Yes,
is.
there it is. Thank you. And now our final question before we get to questions from the audience. How will you ensure transparency and clarity in local taxation policies, making it easier for businesses and citizens to understand and plan for their financial obligations?
Well, number one, this is kind of an old theme here, but let's get rid of the hidden tax on our water bills known as the pilot payment, which stands for payment in lieu of taxes. So the city is taxing the utility as if it were a private for-profit business. And it's a scheme that went largely unnoticed until other forces, which we know about, increased our water bills about 65%. So people started taking a look at the bills. If you ran a business where 20% of your revenue is flying out the window for other things than operating your business, I think you'd start looking at what that is and figure out how to turn that off. We haven't done that. We can. Based on the current calculations, it's approximately 18% to 20% of your water bill amounts to $2 million. So that will buy a lot of extra staffing that we're looking to do, which we estimate could be $400,000 a year that could add to the water rates, your water bills. So let's eliminate that. Alder Killian offered an amendment during the budget process to take that down to zero. That failed. I think that they thought the thought process was, hey, that's too big of a shock on the system. We can't do that. So I said, hey, well, let's inch it down. Let's whittle this thing down a little bit. And I offered an amendment to take it $100,000 a year over the next 15 or 20 years. And that failed. We couldn't even get a token reduction to tell the people, we hear you. We hear you. It's expensive. You hear it all over town. The mayor gets the first crack at the budget. This is low-hanging fruit. This would have been an easy no-brainer. But we resisted. And the argument was, hey, if we have to get rid of that money, we'll have to put it on the tax levy. That's probably true. Or we find a way to reduce it. But the way I look at it is, if it was if it was good enough to charge you behind your backs when you didn't know you were paying that hidden tax, it certainly should be justifiable to put it on the tax levy and tell the citizens what we're spending it on and why you're paying that taxes. It's really not that difficult to be, or put a line item on the water bill that says 20% out the window. We have the hydrant tax on there. We have other taxes on there. Where's that hidden tax going? Let's reveal it. Actually, let's eliminate it. And then the second thing is the budget process. We currently work on what is called cost to continue. So we look at what we spent last year, we adjust for inflation, we add a percentage, then we add supplementals to it, and then we call it a budget. There's no incentive for efficiency in that system. It's worked over the years, but I mean, the incentive is not for us to save money at the end of the year. The incentive is to spend it. So what I would like to do, and I proposed this and it got shot down, of course, but it's a process made famous by Jimmy Carter when he was governor of Georgia. It's called zero-based budgeting. And what zero-based is, instead of starting from last year, you start from zero, and then you add and justify your spends based on needs of the department and the mission of the city at the time. It's not based on last year's spending. So we could do this, and we don't want to shock the system, but it's essentially a deep dive into each department. We could do this on a rotating basis and get that done over 4 years. 4 years. 2020, Mayor Rosenberg said debt has doubled in the last 4 years under Rob Milkey. And anyone serious about reducing debt isn't going to go down that path. Well, we have gone down that path. Unfortunately, debt today is $236 million. And she isn't done yet. You've probably heard people say and repeat that it's Rob Milkey's fault, or Jim Tipple's fault, or Lynn Lawrence's fault. Heck, maybe August Bush started this when he was the first mayor back in, the day. But we can't blame them for the $80 million we're potentially on the hook for coming up in the next 5 years on lead service. We can't blame them for the interest. We're looking at, in the next 5 years, looking at $388 million. And that's not counting any other planned spending in the next 5 years. So, ladies and gentlemen, we can't handle more debt. I'm not a politician. I don't need to go to Madison or Washington to get my orders. I'll sit down with council early on, and we'll go over the issues and prioritize and execute the mission. So again, we're going to prioritize and execute the mission, and I'm going to ask for your vote, please, on April 2nd. Vote for Doug Denny for mayor. Thank you. I'm out. That was our first
Thank you
one I
very
went
much.
over.
Thank you very much. And now we'd like to turn our attention to the audience. I'd like to remind the members of the audience that this program tonight is being live streamed. So please raise your hand, and then wait until someone with a microphone is able to get to you, so that those that are listening in on the internet can also hear your question. Are there any questions from the audience? There's one over here.
Good evening. Is this on? Okay, sorry. My question is twofold. You mentioned a lot of plans for expanding industry. All right. Now, okay. My question is twofold. You mentioned a lot of plans for developing industry, and you mentioned the strength of healthcare in the area. Healthcare in the area has some struggles with staffing. We're not attracting or keeping young professionals here. And a lot of that has to do with the past thinking of industry is the king here. That may be an oversight by the chamber for not promoting inclusion and diversity in the area. I work with some doctors from the medical college, and the first thing they're saying is, we can't wait to get out of here because of the kind of backwards climate and non-acceptance of others or immigrants in the community. What would your plans be to address inclusion and diversity and maintain or retain young professionals?
Councilman, I forgot to mention that we're going to limit responses to 3 minutes so that we can get as many questions in as possible.
Well, thank you for that question, and I would like to meet those people who are in that situation. I recently read a book by Ginny Rometty. Ginny Rometty, first female CEO of IBM. Big Blue was a man's company for years and years. So she was at the helm of that company, implemented some in her statement, not mine, business, and I would assume this business as well, are in much better positions than government to make change in this area for a couple of reasons. One, businesses define their culture. Amazon is far different than IBM or GM. You've got a woman heading GM, Mary Barra. I think she's still there. Ginny Rometty implemented a thing called Skills First. So we hire people, or they hire people who are traditionally underserviced in those. At one time, here's an example, IBM required a 4-year degree for every entry level, 95+% of every entry level position. Who does that hurt the most? It hurts people coming out of communities where they don't have the opportunity to go to college, where they don't have the technical schools, they don't have a support system. So Ginny recognized that if we identify their potential to learn, their potential to be a lifelong learner, their potential to be part of their team, we will hire them and we'll put them through school. We'll put them on an apprenticeship track. We'll put them on the job training, and we'll integrate them into their company. And they've done a tremendous job. I don't have statistics to cite here for you right now, but they have moved the needle in that department better than any other company out there, led by Ginny Rometty. It's a book called Good Power. I'd recommend reading it.
I think we had a question somewhere over here in the back over there with the traveling microphone.
Hi, Doug. We heard a lot about the decreased students here, our ability to not retain people, although I doubt it's DEI reasons. We are tax unattractive. That's why we don't have growth. We can't keep our college students living here because they want to go somewhere else. The few people that do work in Wausau don't live in Wausau because of our taxes and our water bills. What will you do to address those things that truly make it a place to want to live and a place to want to work?
Okay, well, we talked a little bit about it earlier. We're going to create a budget, stick to it. I want to develop, or I want to come to an agreement with council early on. I don't want to see taxes continue to be bumped up against the levy limit every year. Can we flatten them? Can we lower them? One, we're going to flatten them because we're going to come in with a budget that is under the levy limit, and we're not bumping up against it. We're not taking 2 or 3% every year just because we can. Growth is another contributing factor, and it's a double-edged sword here. How do you get it? How do you get the growth if you can't attract them into town? My daughter works in real estate. She's had young families come into town, but looking at a house that meets their price range. They go to the bank to get their loan. If not for the tax burden, they could have afforded it. They end up in Mosinee or other locations. So first we need to start with capping it. We need to commit to paying down our debt. Our debt currently is 24%. And you see it in the little the pie chart, that's the dollar bill on the bottom of your tax bill. It actually went down about 1% this last year, largely because we added 12 firefighters and we spent more on police and fire. So as a percentage, it went down a little bit. But we also added $1.2 million in shared revenue from the state of Wisconsin. We still bumped up taxes on top of that several percent. We got to stop doing that. So let's set a budget, stick to the budget, and set ourselves on a path to bring it down. And again, growing tax base is the only way we're going to relieve those homeowners of more taxes. We can cut, but we can't cut it as fast as we can potentially grow it.
And I think we had a question here in the middle. There you go, right here.
I'm doing like he is.
Hi,
I'm
LaTanya.
LaTanya Campbell. I am a licensed professional counselor here in Wausau. So when we talk about DEI not being an issue to retain people, we obviously know that that is a factor. People need to feel safe and accepted. I currently am looking for somewhere else to relocate. But with that same thing in mind, you made mention of getting the community's input on what legislations or what ordinances that you pass, how do you plan on actually getting out to the people so that you can hear what their needs are versus just the people that are around you in city council and the people in these large board meetings? So the people, that are going to Aldi's and Walmart where I go and Target, like the people that you might not see every day, how are you going to get their input on what you do?
Sure, good question. I don't think I said it wasn't an issue. I said there are solutions to the issue with business and help with the city. So a couple of things there on transparency is, well, one simple thing, and this is sort of a policy thing. We have this thing called a 6-day rule in council, where the packet for councilmen and councilwomen to make the decisions that affect you every week comes out in a timely fashion, and it comes out 6 days in advance. Very, very, very frequently, and almost maybe, I can't remember when we've had a 6-day rule. A lot of times comes out 4:30, 5 o'clock on a Friday night ahead of the council meeting on Tuesday. Frequently or occasionally it comes out Monday and stuff gets added to the packet. So it's a burden on the counselors to be able to make timely and informed decisions, but it's also a heavy burden on citizens to be able to, I mean, I assume you're not sitting looking at the city website every day waiting for a packet to get updated. We don't do that. So on critical issues, we need to take extra steps to make sure we have the community engagement. Alder Killian has performed community engagement very well in his district. I think I would charge the alders in each district to get out and help that charge, lead that charge for setting up opportunities to meet. If we have to have more listening sessions at the city, but when it's a decision that involves significant taxes, it significantly affects individuals. It's a equity policy, whatever that may be considered, non-routine. We have the consent agenda where we just rubber stamp it, but a lot of the issues need to be pondered and need to not be put through at breakneck speed. Not everything's a crisis. So I'll put the brakes on it, and I will charge staff to get packets and get information and abide by the 6-day rule. Open records, here's another one. This is probably even better. We've got a backlog of open records, and it's very, very maddening to be able to put in an open records request, the press primarily, but find that it's days and weeks and months before they get that fulfilled. I will track, and I will order the clerk to track open records requests. So if you put in a request for something you're extremely concerned about, I will give, and I don't know the day, maybe 10 days, whatever's a reasonable day. I want that tracked, and I will review it regularly, and I'll start looking at the outliers. Is it too much information? Is it private information? Should it be disseminated? Yes or no? And let's find out why we're not providing that information and why we're withholding it essentially from residents. You deserve to know in a timely fashion, and that's just one piece of it.
Well, as hard as it is to believe, our time is up. And I want to thank you for being here this evening. Thank you for participating in this town hall, and best of luck to you on April 2nd. Please join me in a round of applause for Councilman Doug.
Thank you.
Yep.
That way? Oh, my phone is over there.
And next up, I'd like to welcome to the stage incumbent Mayor Katie Rosenberg. Mayor? Who will be out momentarily.
Hello.
Katie, great to see you. Well, Mayor Rosenberg, thank you for joining us this evening. As we did in the last round, we'd like to begin by having you take a couple of minutes to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your platform. Whoops, and I just hit my microphone. Sorry about that.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me and also for hosting this forum. It's really great to see everyone engaged in this really important election. My name is Katie. I was born in Wausau. I grew up in Wausau. I went to a small parochial school here, and I mention that only because I still run into my kindergarten teacher when I'm grocery shopping. I graduated from Wausau East High School. I went to school here at the amazing UWMC, which is what I still call it in my head. And then I graduated with my bachelor's degree from UWSP and my master's from the George Washington University. I've kind of taken a circuitous path to get to this kind of a position in policy. I started off in news. I worked at a local television station. I was behind the scenes. I got to write news stories. I got to interview folks. I got to get really invested and interested in what's going on in our community. And there came a point when I decided I wanted to be a lot more involved in politics than you can be, as these reporters who are here know you can't be. So I switched my trajectory and I went to a Fortune 500 company right here in Wausau. I was so lucky to be able to work at Foot Locker. And I got to work there for 7 years. I got to figure out how to target young people with what they want to do with their futures with sports. But I also got to run for county board. And I found it extremely meaningful to be a part of that policy body and help direct some of those big decisions that we were making as a county. I especially got into the health and human services issues, understanding that mental health is an issue that we really needed to focus on. And then I had the opportunity in 2020 to be elected a mayor here. And since then, focused on a lot of different issues, but I would say probably the top things that I'm talking about to folks now, water, obviously, we can't go anywhere without talking about water. It's really an expensive and critical topic that we control at the city level. Housing, another really big topic that we are trying to address. We're 525 units below where we need to be at the end of the year. And then, of course, what I call welcoming, but maybe what the chamber would call placemaking, making sure that people feel like they belong here and they want to be here and they want to raise their families here. I would love to challenge the people I went to school with, move back to Wausau, come here, help us build our community together.
Well, thank you for that introduction. With the 2024 spring election just 4 weeks away, please share your overarching vision for Wausau's
I'm gonna try not to overreach.
I gotta work on that word. Overarching vision for Wausau's economic future and how you believe the business community and community members can contribute to that vision.
Yeah, so I actually had the opportunity of being elected in April 2020, which meant that we were kind of shut down as a state. So we had a lot of time to be separate from each other, but think about how do we get more people engaged in what we're doing, whether that's the business community, whether that's individual entrepreneurs, whether that's students who want to get to know what they should be doing with their lives. And so we had to be creative, and we had some opportunities to do listening sessions for things with the DOR, the Department of Revenue. They helped host. What do we need to bounce back? And that gave us the opportunity to really hear from folks across the business. I believe people from the chamber participated, but we also had folks in higher education and everywhere. And largely they said, we got to figure out how to be connected again. So we had that. We did some listening sessions with the ARPA funds. We got more than $15 million in federal ARPA funds. And so with the help of the Finance Committee Chair, we were able to hold a couple of listening sessions to hear about priorities from the community. Surprisingly, or not, we heard a lot about housing, a lot about inflation. Folks were worried about that. So, working on some of those public works projects, using those dollars has been really helpful. And when it comes to working together with the business community, we've had some interesting starts and stops, especially when I think about our big, huge mall development project. And I think one of those things that when I came in, I heard from folks that they were concerned about that project and they wanted to know more about it. And so we sat down, and it took us months to sit down and talk through what that looks like moving forward. And we had an amendment that we were able to present to the council, and it ultimately saved Wausau taxpayers $2.6 million in future obligations, which was good. And it also got the ball moving forward. So we were able to kind of manage the developer expectations, and I'm hopeful that we're in a good spot for that too. But I would also say there's been some really interesting things happening, even just recently. You've probably heard about Colby and Colby working on solving the issue related to housing for their employees, but also the rest of our community. And so they've proposed a 100-unit complex to help address their housing needs, but also the needs of the community. And really all we had to do as a council and as a plan commission was approve the rezone request. So that was really exciting. And what they're doing is pretty interesting moving forward. And I would love to talk to more folks about what that looks like because we, again, need 525 units moving forward. I would say too, when it comes to working with business, I would love to say, let's start attracting huge employers, but we really need employees to be here too. So we need to work on that demographic shift, making sure that people want to be here, making sure that we treat each other both personally, but also systemically the right way, so that we're able to have those good interactions with each other. So I would say there's a lot of opportunity to continue working with business. I know that it's not always easy to work with government. We are charged with record keeping and public meetings and all of those things, but keep working with us, and I think you can see some of the progress we're seeing across the city.
Now, let's move on to discuss specific strategies for economic development. Mayor Rosenberg, in what ways do you see public-private partnerships contributing to economic development here in Wausau in areas like transportation, utilities, technology?
Yep.
And how will you facilitate those collaborations to ensure prosperity for all the entities?
Sure. So we obviously can't do this stuff alone. It takes a lot of work from our community, our invested partners, and us too. So I would say a good example moving forward of what that could look like is what we're doing when it comes to lead service line remediation. So it needs to be done. We're being told by the EPA that we need to get this done, replace the 8,000 service lines in the next 10 years. So that's something that needs to happen. But we need to have the workers to do it. We need to have the dollars to do it. And we need to have the will to do it, the political will. So that's the goal here. And so we need to, train our workforce. So we're working closely with labor to make sure that we are able to train the number of plumbers that we need, but not just us. There are other communities even close by who need to do the same work. So we're training folks that will help benefit the entire region. We also need the dollars. So bipartisan infrastructure law dollars are available right now, and we can capitalize on that. We've received a bunch of 5.7 million, I believe, through the revolving loan, and we are able to get to work right now on this. But I would say the other thing is we need that public part to be the public, the people engaged here in this room. So we're working closely with folks from the Medical College of Wisconsin to talk about the health issues related to lead, but also they were interested in how do we make Wausau lead-free altogether. So if we're given consent, we're able to test the insides of people's homes and help them get HUD dollars to remediate that lead inside their home. We're working with H2N, the Hmong to Hispanic network, so that we are communicating with people in their language, and they also understand what we're doing here. So we're knocking on a lot of doors, we're getting that work done, and I think that's probably a really good example of how we can work with the public and the private to get this work done for the city. And that's just one of those. Obviously, the big thing in our downtown right now is the mall. And we are really, we've had some interesting and challenging conversations about it, but we know that it needs to happen. And we're feeling comfortable about where we're going with the Children's Imaginarium. It's great, very popular. And we hope that pretty soon we'll have folks living downtown too, and having access to those amenities and just animating our whole downtown.
So switching gears and turning to the workforce development front, how can the city encourage and facilitate continuous learning opportunities for the workforce, given the evolving nature of industries and technology?
Sure. So one of the interesting things that we are doing even just today, we had a visit where we talked through how do we get the workers we need, the workforce we need as a city, and make sure that we are well prepared for the future. And so we're talking through what do apprenticeships look like. You know, we heard in the State of the State address a good focus on apprenticeships with teachers and some other places. So we thought, why not with our own internal teams, can we do this? So we're talking through what does a firefighter apprenticeship look like? Could we be kind of that place in the world, in the state, and in the world where people go to train? We're very well known for our emergency services, and we can make sure that we are staffing appropriately for the rest of, our city's time. So we're really excited about that program. We're kind of borrowing a little bit from a city. We see Fitchburg had a really great internship program. So we're borrowing a little bit. We're adding to the educational components, and we're talking to our friends at North Central Technical College who are on board. They think we're a little aggressive, but we're ready to work together on that, and we want to make sure that we can continue getting the workers that we need. So I think those are examples of things we can do, but we don't need to focus just on city jobs too. There are some apprenticeships I'm seeing across the state that are pretty interesting. Madison has one with solar developers, so they're able to learn the trade and then build solar arrays on top of all of the city buildings. So I think there's opportunity for both kind of public jobs in that way, but also private.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. And switching gears yet again.
We're just switching gears, aren't we?
We are. We do that a lot. Can you provide some specific examples of regulations or bureaucratic processes that you believe need streamlining to increase the efficiency of city operations? And how will you involve business and other stakeholders in that review and reform of those regulations to ensure they're fair, effective, and responsive to community needs?
Sure, this is a fun question because when I was thinking through what does this look like in action, when I think about the processes that really kind of tick people off, I usually hear about it when it ticks someone off. And that's, when maybe zoning doesn't go the way they would like, or maybe there's a permit that was issued or wasn't. Maybe there's some permitting that people are confused about. So I think those are opportunities that would require explanation as opposed to streamlining, because some of those are required by the state. We have statutory obligations. So I think making sure we're working through that with people so they understand before they're mad about it. We have a lot of opportunity to kind of shore up our online permitting process. I know that we've been making a go at it with our new website, and people have actually been responding in a really positive way. But I think when it comes to including businesses, I would welcome people to come to my office, and they do. They show up and they tell me what's not working for them. And so we've taken a couple of opportunities to try and fix this. One of the big ones is probably that we're talking through as a community now. The YMCA is a perfect example. They have a great program with the landing, and they want to expand it, and they need more parking. Well, our zoning code doesn't really allow for that use in the place they want. So, of course, I was surprised by the kind of loudness of the debate. And so after our first plan commission meeting where we talked through it, we talked to the Y, and I talked to some of the funders, and I went to the landing to talk to some folks there. And they had some great ideas. I had some different ideas, and I shared them all with our staff. And I think we're going to end up in a good spot where they get what they need. But that's one of those examples of that bureaucratic process is really hard. And especially if it's zoning that you're looking for and you have to deal with a body of folks who are your neighbors and not just your electeds. They're making decisions based on criteria set forth in the zoning code that as a council we own. So if there are things in there we need to change, I think we should. But I think that's the opportunity.
Thank you for your reply. And one final question before we get to questions from the audience. How will you ensure transparency and clarity in local taxation policies, making it easier for businesses and citizens to understand and plan for their financial obligations?
Sure. Over the last 2 years, and I'm just going to look at the last 2 years, we've had 60 finance committee meetings where we talk about all of the different things that we fund or that we would like to fund. We had 6 budget workshops last budget cycle. We had a public hearing. We had a couple different goes at it at council. So I think that there is a lot of offering that we do when it comes to this budget process. Now, what I suspect is that that's not how people want to interact with the council or with the budget or the financing. So working through what that looks like, I've had a couple of neighborhood meetings where I presented a version of the budget that they could take a look at and give me feedback, and that was good. It does take a lot of time, but we're willing to put that work into. I would say if there are taxation issues that people find particularly galling, reach out to me. Again, we've held meetings, listening sessions, 60 meetings to talk through these things, which is really an important thing. We've talked through this at special interest meetings. I know that if I say something that bothers one of these interest organizations, they have no problem calling me up and saying, hey, I need you at my next meeting. What did you mean by this? So no problems there talking through this stuff. But I would also say that by the time people have decided that they don't like the tax portion of it, it's already past the point where maybe they could challenge their assessment. So just a note for everybody who's listening, there is opportunity when you get your assessment. You get a chance to go in, we call it open book. You come into City Hall and you look at your assessment. You can look at your neighbor's assessment. You can look at folks across the city at those assessments to see what that looks like. And you can challenge it. We have a nonpartisan board that reviews these challenges and decides if it's right or wrong. And then, of course, there are opportunities to challenge those. So I think if there are questions about transparency, we have definitely a lot of processes for opening it up for folks.
And now we turn our attention to audience questions. I'd like to once again remind members of the audience that tonight's program is being live streamed. So please wait until someone with a microphone is by you so that those that are listening in can hear your question. And also just a reminder that we're allowing 3 minutes for responding to audience questions.
All right.
So who has a question? Right over here, we'll start. Yep.
My name is Marcia Young. My question is this. Knowing that cities only grow with the growth of business, the business that provides jobs and that provides opportunities and provides a living for persons, knowing that and hearing the differences in business backgrounds, for example, your 7 years at Foot Locker and Mr. Dennings in the military, which is extensive, obviously, and business. Could you please describe or tell us why you feel you're better able and you have more expertise to grow the city and its business aspects?
Sure. So I think some of the, we have a couple of different buckets that we need to tackle when it comes to growing business. So first of all, we need the people, right? We're seeing a demographic decline, so we need people here. But at the same time, we have a housing issue where we need housing. So we need both of those things. We need more people and we need more housing. And then at that point, I think we can bring in business. I've heard from some businesses, we're often reached out to by folks who they say, can we have a plant in Wausau? And, I'm interested in having this conversation with folks. But when they start to ask about what does your demographic look like, and when you say something like there's 10,000 open jobs in our county that aren't being filled, that's a problem for them, a demographic problem. Now, I will say we've welcomed some new arrivals recently over the last 2 years, and they've had some great work with our businesses. And one of the challenges we have there is transportation, and I think that's across the board. So rethinking our transportation system, our new transit director just started yesterday, and he's already kind of off to the races with his top 3 issues that he would like to work on. And I think extending that transit out to the places where people are employed will help, and it will help business right away. But again, we need to continue working on building those houses. We need to continue on attracting people and being a place where people like to live. And I think that when it comes to my background in both choosing Wausau over and over again as my home, but also having an opportunity to kind of work on policy at the county level and at the city level, I think that experience with just making people feel welcome and want to participate in that discussion. We've had a lot of people who have had a big say, but we're also hearing from new people, which is something I think that is welcome.
Thank you. I think we had a question here in the middle. Did I see right over there? Up there.
Hi, Katie.
Hi.
There is a persistent rumor circulating in the public that Wausau could become a sanctuary city. Without overwhelming community support, what might you do to prevent this?
Yeah, so that's interesting. I hadn't heard that rumor until there was a neighborhood meeting recently, and I was asked about it by the alder, and I said, we're not a sanctuary city. You would have had to vote on that, first of all. But we talked through what that would actually look like. And so our city attorney did actually give us the whole rundown of what that looks like. And in Wisconsin, it's not actually permitted to have sanctuary cities. I think Madison is a sanctuary city, but I'm not sure how they finagled that one, and it's not something we're looking into. So preventing it is not really something that we would need to do because we can't do it. But thank you for bringing that up because I have heard that too.
And then I think I saw a hand over on, you had asked a question earlier, right? I think we're going to try to have someone else that hasn't asked. Okay, fantastic.
Hello, my name is Joan, a former teacher of Katie. Hi.
Oh, hi, my humanities teacher, everyone.
Lovely then, lovely now. I wondered if you would care to say what your strengths are as a mayor.
So I would say this, everybody comes into this position starting at a different spot and just with different priorities. And I think one of the things that I bring is I'm not super interested in my ego being the center of attention. I would like for us to have sound policy. I would like our policy makers to do the policy making. If they need my help, I want to do that too. But I think also convening people. I found a lot of success in bringing people in to have important conversations. We've had that with our policing task force, for instance, when we had the big protest in 2020. And I asked myself, what are the 2,000 people marching in our 400 block trying to tell us? And so to me, it said they want to understand what our policies are and they want to know if we have to change them. And so we embarked on that 18-month process. And it was exhausting. And by the end of it, I questioned, like, why are we doing this? But I think it's to get to the kernel of, like, this is how we would like to conduct business in Wausau. And so convening those opportunities is really important. I had an opportunity, I have multiple opportunities to bring people together to speak to their representatives that maybe they don't often get to talk to. So whether that's having the governor in and convening a group of people to tell them, this is how your policy is actually affecting me, and him hearing those stories, that's been really meaningful. And just being able to sit back and listen and take notes and see how, as a Wausau person, can I take what people are telling me in these situations and make policy that helps people and doesn't hurt people. I would also say I've used the megaphone in order to get more attention to us. We have our PFAS issue. It was really scary to be it still is, to be the only city in Wisconsin where every single one of our drinking water wells is contaminated with PFAS. And to not know what exactly to do at that point, I reached out and I said, I don't necessarily know how to deal with this, but I need your support. And so I heard from folks who were researchers in Milwaukee. I heard from folks who had dealt with this problem in other places in Marinette. So, being able to reach out and say, I need a little bit of help here so we can craft the right thing for Wausau, it takes a little bit of setting your ego aside. I don't know everything, nobody can, but we're surrounded by great people who have great ideas, so bringing those together.
Well, once again, it looks like
Are those working?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Once again, it looks like we've reached the end of our time together. But please join me in thanking Mayor Rosenberg for being on hand. And thank you very much for participating. Those of you who know me, and there's quite a number of you out there that do, know that I rarely post things on Facebook. So you're gonna have to indulge me for a second while I take a selfie. It's not in the script. Sorry about that. Thank you very much. First of all, give yourselves a round of applause for being here tonight. There is absolutely nothing more important in our system of government than the opportunity for voters to come out and hear their candidates who are running for public office. And I want to thank you for your participation in what I thought was a very, very informative program this evening. Secondly, I'd like to have you join your hands together and thank our three partner organizations, the Wisconsin Institute for Public Policy and Service, the university. Let's give them a round of applause. The University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point at Wausau. And of course, our primary sponsoring organization of the evening, the Greater Wausau Chamber of Commerce. With that, I'd like to bring tonight's program to a close. I'd like to remind all of you, which I don't think I need to do, that Election Day is just around the corner. Please get out and exercise your right to vote. And thank you again for being here.